We are live. Are we? Jorge Gonzalez, Topbin90 Podcast, episode 15. We're coming back after another Charlotte FC win. The team's with a lot of momentum. I've got Brian tonight. How are you, Brian?
Doing well, man. I mean, I'm really impressed with how the season finished. There was definitely a stretch in the Leagues Cup where it was looking a little shaky, but God, what a solid finish.
Nice.
Good
And
move.
Caleb?
Man, I'm feeling great. I mean, we jumped 4 places from last season. The vibes are all-time high. We haven't lost in 5 games. We're scoring a ton of goals, which has never been a thing in Charlotte. So
Right.
It's been really fun, man.
Yep. So, yeah, it's a lot of high vibes. Definitely a different feeling this
It
time.
is.
Actually, you know what? It might kind of be the same in terms of feeling because that was pretty hype going into a playing game after beating Miami last year.
It was a good feeling,
Yeah.
but this is a completely different. That feeling is more so relief. Like we did it. Whereas this time around, it feels like, hold up, we can actually do something. We can actually do something in the playoffs. Whereas last year, I felt like, okay, we scraped in, and maybe we can, get the play in. But I think it's a very different feeling for me personally.
Very different feeling. How about you, Brian?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's got to be a different feeling. I mean, I think the one difference is this last decision day was a road game. So if they had done this at home against DC, I think you see a completely different, just like eruption, that takes place. And so I think that would, have changed the vibe feeling between, this year and last year. So for me, this year's, I mean, they have a really solid chance of at least advancing a couple rounds, if not, pushing for Eastern Conference final. And then, you never know. At that point, you're a game away.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So that's the whole vibe.
Exactly.
100%. So we've got a couple things to talk about tonight. We're gonna talk a little bit DC United. We'll recap that. I want to talk to you guys also about the progression of Patrick Agyemang and Brandt Bronicos, two players that I've seen a lot of progress from both of them this season. I also want to see who you guys think is the key player heading into, playoffs for Charlotte FC. Also, your thoughts on having to face Orlando over Cincinnati or Columbus, because that's what we discussed last time.
Mm-hmm.
And last but not least, what's impressed you so far of Dean Smith's first season? Right.
Sounds good.
So let's get into it. I mean, that first match back, one of the things that we talked about was how would these guys come back, right?
Yeah.
Because last time when we had that big break, the team started slow, the front line wasn't clicking. And then once we've got that momentum, we started seeing, okay, this is a quality Charlotte, but, now is an international break. And it felt like it kind of started this, like that, this match in particular. Caleb, just your thoughts overall on the match.
I thought it was a really great sort of statement from Dean Smith and the guys, because we were asking a lot. I know you guys were asking Dean directly, like, how are the guys going to react to this break? It hasn't been good since we've come back from break anytime. How are they going to react to this? But I think it was really telling to me, again, another sign of maturity and growth within the team of, hey, we're going to pick right back up where we left off, man, and just keep it going. So I'm really pleased to see that. I think the worst thing you can do is lose right before playoffs. For me, that's just like the worst possible thing that can happen. Doesn't matter how you do it. You have to win that game before playoffs.
Just end on a good vibe. And I think, I do think I agree with you, Jorge. Like the first half came out a little sluggish. Some of their passes weren't super crisp. They didn't get a lot of shots. They didn't have a lot of control of the game. Yeah. They defensively, Privet made a really dangerous error where the ball got through him, and Benteke was in on goal. Kalina had to make a ridiculous save, which he's done time and time again this year. So there were moments for DC in that first half, but I think the response in the second half was huge. To be able to recover, you have a break. Last time they had a break, it took them 4, 5, 6 games to recover. This time it took them 1 45-minute window, and I think that's a huge difference to be able to really respond, have that response, get multiple goals, and finish the way they did, where they just completely wiped DC off. And I think it's also revenge for Troy, against Troy Lessez.
Yeah, that was a good. That's a good tweet that you had about him specifically. So
got their revenge after he knocked them out of the playing game last year. They got their revenge, knocked them out of the playoffs this year.
And I saw a tweet from Carol, who's a journalist in Charlotte, saying that our first ever game was a 3-0 loss against DC United.
Yeah, it was.
And this last game that we won, that really punches our mark in the playoffs, gets us a home game, right? that's a 3-0 win in DC. So pretty
Yeah, I want to also talk a little bit about some of those tactical changes we saw, specifically in the front three.
Yeah.
Right. We saw Vargas come in, and we saw Patrick Agyemang start. Obviously, Abada and Swiderski played a good amount of minutes with their international teams.
Yep.
And then I think Dean mentioned it in that press conference heading into this match too, that they had to be assessed. And you know what, I think both of them did a good job. There was a couple of crosses that Vargas had in that first half, one to Urso and one to Patrick, right? That could have been goals, right? So talk to me about, I guess specifically those two players coming into this match.
Vargas and Pat. So I think what I love the most about this team is, and I tweeted about it earlier today, is just our ability to find goals across the board. Like even if it's Swiderski out there, if it's Abada out there, Vargas, Pat, Yuri Tavares, any of these guys, we're finding goals and spreading it all around, particularly in the attack. I think it's the most important. It's cool if you're scoring goals from midfielders and stuff, but you want your attackers to be scoring, and they're getting involved. I mean, all of them are getting involved here at the stretch, and I mean, it's been really special to see. I mean, what a privilege to be able to just be like, oh, I'm gonna throw Pat and Vargas off the bench. These aren't my starters, and I feel confident I'm gonna win this game.
Yeah.
I mean, what a privilege that is. I mean, that's rare in MLS. That's really rare in MLS.
Yeah. Brian, you've been a big advocate of starting Patrick Agyemang. And whether he's coming off the bench or he's starting, he's scoring goals.
Yeah, I mean, I think props to him for finding it. And honestly, he also didn't get a lot of credit for what he did on the first goal either, occupying both of those center backs, having a little bit of a fake kind of dummy where the pass went around him through to BL on his goal as well. So his ability to just kind of occupy and suck up all the oxygen in the room from the back line and just opens up play, for the wingers, whether it's Bial, Abada, Vargas. So props to him there. I also do want to shout out Bial as well, because he was the one starter that kind of stuck in, and it doesn't really matter who's starting around him. He seems to start to be able to really find his groove regardless of who's playing with him, and making great plays on the first goal, making the switch, great pass across. We saw some great passes from several players in this game. Tim Ream setting up Bronico for the transition goal, threw into Agyemang on the second one. So, I mean, just lots of great long passes, sharp, crisp movement, and just their counterattacking was so fluid and quick.
Yeah, let's expand also on Pep Biel, because, this is an on-loan player that, I think as I see more games, the more confident I grow in this guy. Even that first goal, I mean, that switch to Brandt Bronico, and then he finished that play. Obviously, the awareness also of Pat of letting that ball go through for Pep Biel. So, I mean, like, to me, the more games I see of Pep Biel, the more confident I am. Okay, this guy could potentially be our number 10.
Yeah, I think people have to realize, again, Pep's first 5 games with us were preseason for him. Like he was coming on. He hadn't played a competitive game since like May. So the last season in Europe, came to MLS. He had a full preseason, but he had not played any match games or any match sort of fitness, sharpness. That's a very real thing. Practicing and training, the speed, the quickness that you have to be at is very different than actual in-game real match scenarios. And a new league. Keep in mind, this is a new league. It's not just like he's coming off of a preseason where he's going back to the same league. This is a brand new league. And I think we're starting to see, okay, those first 5 games are sort of his preseason. Now we're seeing what Pep can actually really do when he's sharp. And keep in mind, he's also out of position. Like he's making stuff happen out of position. So, I mean, big kudos to Pep for how quickly he's adapted to the league, to the system. And fans are starting to love him, man.
They are. He's slowly becoming a fan favorite.
He is, yeah.
And so I think one of the things that we mentioned was momentum, right? And just the last 5 goals, I think you put this stat out, 14 goals scored, 4 wins, 1 draw, right? I mean, we talked about this because I watched the game with you. I was like, if I'm Cincy and I'm Columbus, I'm like, okay, like we avoided Charlotte, So.
No, yeah, I think I said in that tweet as well. Nobody wants to play the Charlotte side right now. I think that, I mean, we've already gone into Columbus and Ohio and showed them that we can hang with them in their own home. We've shown we can hang with Miami when we drew them at their place. I think that the recipe that Dean has, solid defense, best in the East, second best in the league, combined with that dangerous counterattacking ability. Now we have guys like Pep and Bronico finding these outlets quickly, being able to quickly transition.
Yep.
That's a recipe for success, particularly in knockout sort of stages.
Yeah. And I would say also, I mean, if you're one of the top seeds, just the fact that Orlando and Charlotte matched up against each other, if you're the top seeds, you're like, this is the perfect matchup. These are the two teams of the lower seeds in the Eastern Conference that you don't probably want to play. They're gonna like have to battle each other and knock one of each other out. So I think if you're Columbus, you're also just loving the fact that Orlando and Charlotte are having to play each other, because I mean, down the road, I mean, not having to play, only having to play one at most or none, I mean, is ideal. I think if you're one of the top teams, when you have these two teams that are coming in with a decent amount of momentum, on a high note and being tough to beat. So.
Yeah, I think Miami actually gets the harder side of the bracket.
Yeah, for sure. Because they have to play one of these. They have to play one of Orlando and Charlotte. You have to play one of them. Both of them are coming in on momentum, especially after winning a series. They're going to come in with a lot more momentum at that point. So Miami is going to be, and both teams have a lot of young players that are willing to run too. And Miami is definitely not a running team. So that's another challenge for them.
And on top of that, there's a good Columbus is a favorite on the other side. I know you mentioned this before. So you're gonna have to battle through that way up, and then you likely play Crew again for that conference final. Of course, Charlotte is gonna upset them, but that's
nice.
Awesome. We'll ruin the plans. That's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, nice. I mean, even like, I think that the decision day definitely had drama both in the East and the West as well, because we were kind of keeping up also with the score of Orlando and Atlanta, who barely scraped by, right? And so that's got to be tough for DC another year where, you know, they can't even make a play-in game. Like, it got easier to make playoffs, and they're still not doing it.
Yeah, man. It's been, what, 3 straight seasons now?
And they had the Golden Boot winner.
Yeah.
I don't know the last time the Golden Boot winner has been on a team that didn't make the playoffs, but it's been quite a while.
I mean, that's
might have been ever. Shocking. I don't know. That's fact checked on that, but
I would love to see. Yeah, because I can't think of any moment either where the Golden Boot winner doesn't even make play, and particularly in this structure.
Yeah.
Right. In this sort of way, I think it's sort of hindered the ability of playoffs having that sort of meaning. I think decision day is affected by having 62% of the teams make playoffs.
Yeah.
However,
I mean, we've discussed this at length where, you know, like, it's not really the most ideal, but keep going.
No, I was just gonna say real quick that what I think has made it particularly interesting this year is that the East is so stacked.
Yeah.
The West is also super stacked. I mean, I think if you look at all the teams, even the play-in guys like Montreal, they're still a good, like, that's a good team. Atlanta, trash. I mean, they don't deserve to be there, but Montreal do. And so I think it's gonna be really exciting, really fun, because it's just a lot of really good teams, man.
Yeah, across the board. The Messi effect, really, all these new signings, the last 2-3 windows have just been elevated MLS as a whole. And that's why, I mean, you're setting fan records and everything across the board.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. We briefly mentioned both players too, but I'd love to talk a little bit about the progression of Brandt Bronicos and also Patrick Agyemang. And let's first start talking about Brandt, because, you know, when he first signed, we were like, okay, he's going to be a good depth player for this team. But 3 different coaches, he still starts, right, under all 3 of them. And also, you've seen him improve. You've been so high on just his passing ability recently, right? And so just some of the things that we've seen from him this season, you're like, okay, like, this is a player that, you know, gets a lot of sticks sometimes online. But if 3 different coaches are playing you, you know, that I think you said it, he's undeniable.
Undeniable is the word I use for him. It's just, he cannot be stopped, right? Even though he might not be the most technical player, the most gifted athlete, his willingness to show up the way he does and work. When I've talked to technical staff and stuff, they say he comes to the gym multiple times a day when everybody else is, you know, after training, they're going to lunch and whatnot. He's back in the gym. He's doing planks at his house, right? All these kind of things. Like, he's constantly working on himself and improving. And you can just, that's what happens. That's how a 29-year-old, you know, who generally people would say they're past their peak, continues to find that next level. That's what it kind of takes, is just a willingness, that mindset to kind of just constantly keep improving and finding a better version of yourself. And that's what Bronico has done. And you can see that through the evolution of different coaches. It doesn't matter. Like, his ability to show up on the chart in terms of his running, I mean, it just makes it hard for you not to keep playing him, because you can trust what he's going to bring on a daily basis. And then on top of that, now you're seeing, and he even said this early in the year, he's like, I'm playing better than I've ever played. And that was before the assists started coming. So he was already seeing it himself that was there, that passing was there. And now you're seeing it on the field.
Yeah, and I think it all comes down to this. You mentioned guys that have improved the most. Kalina has also taken huge steps forward as a 31-year-old now.
Yeah.
So I think it's been really cool to see. And in conversation with Dean strongly believes doesn't matter how old you are, you can become a better player.
Yeah.
And Dean says, I don't care how old you are. I think that's a complete myth that you can't improve, and we're seeing it in someone like Kalina. Shout out to Aaron Hyde, the goalkeeper coach for the team, who's done some incredible work with Kalina. Kalina himself has said, this is the best I've ever played. Like, my sharpness, my positioning, my decision making has been next level, top tier.
Yeah.
But that's all a credit and testament to both Bronico and Kalina's mentality of, I'm a student first. I'm 29. I'm 30, 31. They could just be chilling, taking the money, right, playing the games. Instead, they're saying they're hungry. They're just super hungry to get better. And Bronico has been a testament. Bronico, the bare minimum is the hard work and effort.
Yeah.
That's the bare minimum. And you're always going to get that from Brandt. You can always be guaranteed you're going to get that. Now he's adding all those different elements to his game. And you said undeniable. I say inevitable. That's my word for him. Ben Bronico is inevitable.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. Actually, let's stay on the Kalina topic as well, because I mean, he's in contention for goalkeeper of the year, right? Statistically, you put it out right that like there was no better goalkeeper in MLS. But as we know, this league doesn't always care about who did the best. It's more of what looks the best for the outside world. Sometimes is what I see, right? So there's a chance that a guy like Hugo Lloris can still win it.
Yeah.
Right. So how likely do you guys see Kalina actually being the MLS goalkeeper of the year?
Man, I gotta say, I at least seeing what pundits are putting out, what they're writing, people's ballots that they're putting in from media, it looks like a lot of people have Kalina.
Yeah, it's pretty unanimous. I think, even like the underlying numbers for Kalina are like some of the best goalkeeper stats in MLS in the last like decade. It's not just this year. It's like some of the best stats we're seeing over the last since 2013, 2014. So at a point, like, no matter what your name recognition, there's a level where it's just like, and that's what the pundits are showing, is like there's a level where it's just like you just cannot deny what he has done this year.
On top of that, you also have the element, because we've had players that have had good years, but we finished ninth the last 2 years. All of a sudden, not only do we have good individual players, but the team as a whole is performing. We're the second best defense in the league.
It's a fair point.
We have the highest clean sheets in the league, right? We're fifth. We are seen very much as sort of a powerhouse in the East now.
Yeah.
That completely changes.
It's a big word. I don't know if I would say powerhouse, but
you see a lot of pundits. These are not my words. Like, these are what people are writing on MLS, on Backheeled. They're saying that Charlotte is a sleeper team in this playoff stretch. And if we were sitting ninth, is Kalina winning that award?
No, maybe not.
Probably not, to be honest.
But he has an argument right now because of them being in fifth, the amount of goals he's prevented. You could argue that he's saved this team several points individually by himself to help them get to fifth, right? Because there were times when, like, while the defense has been solid, especially during that stretch of 5 straight clean sheets, really solid, kept the volume down. Of late, their attackers have found volume against Charlotte, but Kalina was there to kind of save the day multiple times and kind of keep the points coming in. And I think so. You could definitely say that of any player on Charlotte, Kalina probably is deserving of why they're in fifth and not maybe sixth or seventh, because he's definitely saved them several points by himself.
And that post-expected shots metric, that basically converts how many goals you contributed to as a goalkeeper. And I think he has like 10 point something right now. That means his saves, his shot stopping is the equivalent of scoring 10 goals. And sort of that same sort of impact. To give you perspective, Agyemang is our leading scorer at 10 goals. So that just speaks for itself.
And it's greater than their entire like goal differential, I think, or right at their goal differential for the entire season, right? So that's kind of the difference there as well. Nice.
Yeah. I mean, if he doesn't win it, riot. No,
we know
we get blamed by MLS. Awesome. Speaking of 10 goals, speaking of Patrick Agyemang, that's the last player I kind of want to touch on as well, because there's two things that have that stood out to me about him this season and his progression. One is his technical ability has improved. You saw that in the second goal against Montreal, where he just torched the defender, chipped the ball for that second goal, and then that awareness in the final third, right? And you saw that against DC, right? When, he let that ball pass because he knew Pep Biel was coming to score that goal. So, I mean, 10 goals this season, our top scorer this season, right? I mean, at the beginning of the season, right? I put a post today of the first lineup versus the last one, right? We had Enzo starting, right? Who's not even here anymore. And, we have Swiderski now. But, it doesn't matter what names are around there. Patrick is either coming off the bench and scoring or is starting and putting his name on the goal sheet.
I mean, this is why I've been really hammering home the whole, like, giving him lots of minutes, starting, all that stuff is like, you see with reps, his game is just improving. And that's really, there's no other way to get the timing, because final third is all timing, right? Can you slow the game down so you can pick up to the speed? Because in the final third is when you have to play your fastest, because that's when the game has to be fast, but you have to be able to see the game slowly, right? And the only way to do that is with reps. And I think that's what he's, as he's gotten more reps, the game has slowed down for him, and then he's been able to make the right decision in the right spot more often in the final third. And I think that's just a lot of what it comes down to. Most of his traits for me, I feel like I've seen them there since the beginning. I mean, you could say the technical ability in there has improved. He's always been able to take guys on 1v1. He's never lost that aggression, that willingness to go straight for goal. I think just overall the reps and slowing the game down a little bit for him is the one change. And I think that, I mean, I'm really glad to just see where he's progressed, and I'm really excited to see where he's going. I think he can be an incredible player in MLS. I think for me, could be one of the top MLS strikers in any given year in the future. So that's where I have him at.
I'm glad you mentioned his decision making, because that was the biggest question for me, and that also tends to be the problem with like college players. Even though they have good technical ability, the speed of the game is different. And a big thing in college is you can play hero ball in college. Yeah, most of the time these college picks are the best players on their team, like by far. I mean, imagine Agyemang against college kids. Yeah, like it's gonna be rough.
Well, we saw it like MLS Next Pro.
It was like
there you go.
He was playing academy.
He was playing also. Keep in mind, he was playing winger in college, so he's also learning a new position. I don't think people have talked about that enough. He was a winger in college. That's where he played most of his reps, and now he's playing a new position at striker in a different tier. A different speed of play. And that's why I told you this when we watched the game. It was like older, like beginning of the season, Agyemang on that dummy he did would have tried to make a play on that ball. He didn't make a play on that because he recognized, had the awareness of like, okay, I see Pep's coming over on this side. He didn't have that at the beginning of the year, but that's really dangerous. If he can continue to develop that, he's really dangerous.
Well, because his presence, just like you could see as the play was happening, and you get to the box, all the center backs weren't even thinking about Biel. They were just like all swarming Agyemang. He absorbed, just like took all the oxygen out of that play. And then, I mean, Biel is just wide open. And if that continues to happen, I mean, Biel is going to have a lot of freedom to work with, because, I mean, you have to occupy Agyemang with two because of his physical ability and his ability to take players on 1v1 at like a 50% clip. You can't leave him 1v1. You have to go 2v1 against him, because he'll anytime you leave him 1v1, he's going to take that chance, knowing that he's got a chance to go in on goal. So you have to guard him 2v1, leaves wingers wide open. He's going to continue to give Bronico and other runners space.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, definitely Dean has good problems, you know, heading into this final stretch, which I think, especially those two players, is important to continue to highlight, because, these are players that like Charlotte picked out. I love that, like Brandt, like I think you did the article on him, right? On his 100 appearances and how much it meant to him, right? And
for a little bit of insight, I mean, when I wrote in the article, he was literally tearing up just talking about it. I had talked to him before he actually hit the 100 mark, and I just said to him, I said, "Hey, how would that be? You're approaching it, you're getting close. How does it feel?" He hadn't even hit it at that point. Yet. And as he was talking to me, he was starting to choke up and tear up about it. I mean, that's how much this club means to him. I mean, people don't realize just how much this man bleeds the black and blue, man. He loves his club. So I love to see him getting minutes. He's such a likable guy on and off the pitch. And now he's balling out. So
inevitable, undeniable Brandt Bronicos. The mayor, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So let's talk also a little bit about, before this, we all were kind of in agreement that we wanted to play FC Cincinnati,
Yeah.
right? And then we're looking, okay, like there was never a chance after we started winning that either Red
Yeah.
Bulls or New York were coming back, right?
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, well, after that, my mindset became more like I believe more in this team.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter which of these three opponents we play,
Yeah.
like they're gonna compete and do well, right? And we finished 1 point off of Orlando, right? And so this game, if people are looking at it, is a pretty 50-50 game
It is.
so far. So just I want your thoughts on having to play Orlando versus Cincy or Columbus.
I think that I think when we were talking about who we wanted to play, we're looking at a Charlotte side that was struggling, wasn't scoring much, wasn't defending well, was in a bad rut. Now we're seeing what I think is a Charlotte we haven't seen all season long. Like one thing I mentioned in my tweet today was this team that's playing right now is a brand new team to any sort of version of this in the past. We would score one goal, dink it in, park the bus, hold out for the win. We're blowing teams out in their place as well. This is a new side with new signings. They're clicking. The chemistry is there. All attackers are in form. Abada, Swiderski, Agyemang, Biel, all these guys are in form. And so, with that said, it became more of, like you said, it doesn't matter who we play. I strongly believe we can beat Orlando, but Orlando are an incredibly good team. They are very tough. I know they haven't had many wins in the top four. Regardless, they're an incredibly dangerous team. And I mean, yes, Cincinnati may be an easier matchup. However, Orlando are also habitual chokers in playoffs. If anyone follows MLS, they're habitual chokers in playoffs. That we'll see. It's a new year. We'll see. But
I really hope that doesn't come back and bite
but
you.
I mean, the thing that's scary is Charlotte are also the type of team that have always like broken those like records and stuff.
Yeah.
So
it's like when we finally get confident, they do something.
No, right?
Caleb's early introduction to the Topbin90.
With that said, however, it is a very even matchup. I do think this is gonna come down to the wire. It might be 3 games. It might be a 3-game series. It might be.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I could see that for sure. I think, like we said earlier, I think these are the two teams that, if you're looking at the standings as a whole, the top teams probably did want to play and are grateful that they're playing each other instead at 4 and 5. Makes it a very even series. Both teams are coming in with a decent amount of momentum. I know Orlando lost their last game to Atlanta, but at the same time, as you see that game progressing, and there's no way Oscar Pareja and them didn't see that we were blowing out DC, whereas like, okay, now, and then also seeing New York losing to Montreal, the game matters less and less for Orlando as it progresses, and the game mattered a ton to Atlanta that entire time. Plays a role, right? If you don't have a lot to play for and you're going against a team that has everything to play for, that's why you see relegation, situations in the Prem and stuff like that play out the way they do sometimes. If you have everything to play for, another team doesn't, it's just hard to find that momentum in those situations. So, but I would say Orlando does have a lot to play. I mean, it is coming in with a lot of momentum now. Charlotte as well. I think this, easily could go to 3, like you said. But at the same time, for Charlotte, I feel like the one advantage to being the away team is that you kind of have a little bit of freedom in the first home game in Orlando. You don't have to win that game.
Mm-hmm.
Orlando has to win that because you have to win your home game. That's the whole thing about a series. You have to win your home game. Charlotte just has to win one of their 2 road games. So they can come in and play with a lot of freedom, go for it if they want. It's sort of like a low risk, high reward situation for them because their must-win game is the home game.
Yeah. And to add to that real quick, I also want to say that we, like with this Orlando side, like that people are mentioning, we did get spanked by Orlando when we were there. It wasn't an awful performance, but they scored a lot of goals on us. I think this is apples to oranges. I don't think you can look at that game because this is a team that was winless. I think we were winless in like 9-10 straight games. Yeah. We had lost 2 straight before going into that game. Confidence all-time low. New players are still clicking. I think you can't compare that game and say, yeah, but look what they did at that point. This would be, and this wasn't a playoff game. This was just a regular season. Playoff is completely different pressure, a completely different intensity.
Yep.
Playoff soccer and MLS is way different than regular season. Yep. So this is a clean slate. Nothing else matters over the past. Only this games matter now.
Yeah, and also when you lose to Atlanta United, who's been struggling all season at home for the last game of the match, right? That also puts a little bit of a damper
Yeah, 100%.
for you, right? So I mean, these are small things, but at the end of the day, they could matter, right? So heading into a playoff, and I think for me, what's most exciting is MLS is really gonna find out what a playoff at Charlotte will be like, right?
Yeah.
We've never seen it.
That's a good point.
MLS never seen it, right? So in playoffs, you tend to focus more on the games that are being played, right, versus the whole. And people will actually see the type of atmosphere that Bank of America can do, right? And that's something that I don't even think Orlando's ready for.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because just as the game is different on the field for the players in playoffs, it's different in the stands.
100%.
It's way different in the stands. When it's playoffs, it's way different. It's much louder. The ref you suck chants come out way earlier. But yeah,
I don't know if they can come out much earlier.
Hey, depending on who we have. Hey, Ted.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm super excited. I will likely be at that game. So
nice. Well, we'll be there. We'll also be going to Orlando. We've got some special guests that we're lining up for a podcast. This one's live right now as well. So, we're testing things out. So hopefully, the sound and the quality is good for everybody. And so, but we've got another podcast in Orlando where we'll go way more in depth in Orlando. And then when we come back for the home match, we're doing another pod. So get ready. We're going to be covering this team like nobody in Charlotte's going to be covering Charlotte FC. So I'm very hype about that, right? So I also want to let's switch gears a little bit and talk about Dean Smith's first full season at Charlotte FC, right? So like now we have what to measure him for, I guess, a regular season, which I mean, like, you couldn't have asked for more from this guy this first season, right? Finishing 5th, we got hammered in our we posted our score predictions, right? Shout out Cisco, who's producing this. He was right on the money, said we would finish 5th. Elite ball knowledge. Right? But I mean, finished 5th. One of the things that I think Vaughn mentioned and a couple other guys mentioned that I want to say I wasn't a believer of was that if nothing changed, but we just improved slightly defensively, we would finish higher. I thought we could improve, but I didn't think we could finish as high as we finished now. I mean, I think we're 15 less goals than we were last year, right? Conceded, right? I think the lowest goals conceded in the East, which is great. So I mean, there's some stuff that I've seen from Dean Smith this season, and I'm like, from the get-go, this guy has just figured it out. We talked about it early on in the season where if a player wasn't available, okay, let's throw in Fasha. Okay, let's throw in Tiger Smalls. Like next man up mentality. The period where goals weren't clicking, okay, let's make changes. Put Tim Ream, bring back Privet, unlock the offense, get Nate playing higher. Like there's things that you've seen from a tactical standpoint that have improved this team, from just a way of projecting yourself as well. He doesn't seem to have the pressure. We were freaking out early on in the season. One DP, Swiderski's gone, Camille's gone, and he's like, you know what? Like, I'm chill. Like I've coached in the Prem. Right? So, I mean, that's a long-winded way of asking you guys about, Dean Smith's first season. And I'll start off with you, Brian. Talk to me so far.
For me, I feel like he got this team back to kind of first principles. What is the core of this team? Who are we? What's our identity? How are we going to play? And then how also are we going to set up structurally? And just kind of like laid out a depth chart that was consistent and something that the players could count on all year. So he established up for me a lot of like just the first principle stuff. This is my fullback. These are my fullbacks. This is my center backs. This is the backup to those guys. This is my midfield. These are my starters. This is kind of he established that out of the gate. And I feel like even though as new players came in, you could still see the established depth chart, sort of setting the tone throughout this season. He also said in the I think it was after the last home game on the presser, like we've really followed through on our 3 main pillars, which he said was being strong off the ball, controlling games well off the ball especially, and then being tough to beat, right? So those are like the three pillars he established. And I think that's something that's just important, whether it's a soccer team, business, just having those your core values of who you are and being able to kind of hold yourselves accountable to that, I think is what he's done better than really anything else at this point. And that's kind of improved the results overall. It's just kind of establishing first principles. And I don't think Charlotte have had that before. Just like, what's our identity of this club? Can we establish like who's supposed to be playing in what position and how are they supposed to be playing there and what do we expect from them, right? It's kind of always been a rotation of things and stuff. And we just don't see that anymore. It's very consistent. And I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, and I'll add to that one thing that he's always said all year long has been raising the standards.
Yeah.
Across the board. Whether it's an Amfasha coming up from the academy and legacy, whether it's Pat coming in, Swiderski, the standards were always, you have to be here, and that's a non-negotiable. Yeah. And if you're not here where we're at, bye. Yeah. Right? And so raising the standards has improved the floor of the whole team. Yeah. We're seeing guys like Bronico improve. We're seeing guys like Byrne. I think Byrne even took a step forward this year. We haven't talked about Byrne. Byrne took a huge step forward here. Yeah. We're seeing guys across the board, even the backup guys. Their standards are also held accountable, right? Yeah. Because it's not like just the starters, where the starters are, okay, you guys doing this and this and this. Backup guys, you need to make a difference when you come on. Like Tavares, you got to make a difference when you get on, right? Those standards have always been up here for him, and you can see that across the board. And that, for me, is where it all stems from, is just this mentality and this idea of the standards need to be higher than anyone. It doesn't matter who we have on the roster. Doesn't matter who we have anywhere. That's what we got to do.
Nice. Yeah. I love that. There was one more thing I wanted to add on the Nathan piece, right? Like we were like kind of discussing like player of the year. So we'll have a show specifically for that. But that's a guy that like, when we're thinking player of the year, we're thinking your Kalinas, we're thinking maybe Ashley Westwood, but Nathan Byrne has also been up there for me as like one of the best consistent players for Charlotte FC. So it's really great to see, like, you know, they figured out his contract. Actually, the guys that have really been performing at that level, Kalina, right? That like, okay, they're more long term. And then the second thing I wanted to talk about was, I remember early on in the season, I think Tom wrote an article about, you know, somebody internally from Charlotte mentioned like, even though the pundits don't have us anywhere near the top 5, top 6, right? There's a different feeling in this club, right? And they talked about that, right? Like when nobody was even had them on the map, and full credit to, you know, Charlotte FC, their staff, you know, that's been translated now, because it's one thing to say that, but the next thing is backing it up. And I feel like we've backed it up this season.
100%. And I think we have to keep in mind, this is largely a lot of the same players we've had you know, last season. This isn't that different of a team. Only major differences is Pep and, you know, Gianni. Yeah. Like, we're really talking about a very similar team here from last year.
Yeah, Abada.
Abada, right? Abada's big too. But it's really largely the same. And he got the same core players to got them to believe. And I think one thing that I loved about him early on was there's like this whole perception that, you know, away matches are tough in MLS. He's like, I call BS on that, basically.
That's a good point.
That's a load of BS. Like, away games are only as hard as you make them, right? And so it's just that sort of approach. Whether it's 1DP, away games, doesn't matter what we're going to do. We're going to be tough to beat. We're going to give everybody a game, and we're going to show up with our principles and make sure those are right every single game.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Awesome. A couple more things, and then we'll end it. I also want to give a shout out to the Crown Legacy, right? You know, they went and beat FC Cincinnati too, right? I mean, they barely scrapped into playoffs this season, right? Which it's totally different, because last year they were killing teams, right? And then they went out in the first round. Now they barely scrape in and get a huge result. You know, I watched that match. You know, Tiger Small's golazo, right? Yep. William, the Ecuadorian midfielder, he got a goal, right? And so they were down 1-0. Chituro Odunze, I don't know, this guy has 8 arms because he was saving everything. Incredible. Right? So, I mean, Brian, you've covered some Crown Legacy this year as well. Talk to me about just that result.
Well, and actually, we should probably go back to just like the difference between them being a 1 seed last year and an 8 seed this year. That's the issue of the development team. A lot of those players are on the first team now, right? So when you have all your established players, on the first, promoted to the first team. You have a transition period that you just don't have at the first team level. This is the highs and lows of the development team. But the fact that they were willing to come out and fight against a team that picked them, that's another thing about MLS Next Pro that you don't realize. The top teams get to pick their opponent. And so Cincinnati was the 1 seed and picked Crown Legacy first. And so those kind of upsets hurt a little. They sting a little bit more. I love that approach, honestly, after seeing it for 2 years now, because that happened to Crown Legacy last year.
Yeah.
They called out their opponent and lost to them. So honestly, I love that approach. I mean, I don't know if they'll ever bring it to MLS. I think it would be wild for them too, but I love that approach where you can call out an opponent. The coach can then call out back, because I was watching the clip back. Philadelphia called out NYCFC specifically, and they said, the coach was like, we want our fans to have an opponent to hate, because they love to hate this rival, right? So just those kind of things that happen. I don't know. I just love that about MLS.
The drama would be insane.
It's just dying to just really enhance the content.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious to see how Dean would feel about that. He hasn't been he hasn't really liked a lot of the rule changes.
Let's peak banter. It's just great for banter, man. It's just so good.
That's what I'm talking about. But in the game itself, I mean, they showed a lot of fight. They had to hunker down for a good portion. Odunze had to stand on his head and make a lot of big saves. Scardina also, for me, showed out. He made a lot of great recovery runs. Watch out for him this next year for sure. I think he definitely could fight for a role in 2025.
Yep, I've been saying it also all season. I was like, watch out.
So
for
I think
Scardina.
He's one name. Aaron John as well as another name to look out for. I mean, he made the best 11 in MLS Next Pro.
Just talk a little bit about his progression, because I mean, he came to the academy 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Best player of the academy.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Now
last year.
MLS Next Pro. Right.
Yep.
This year, in the best 11. So I mean, those are very big leaps.
Yeah, he was literally just. The reason he even played in the MLS Next Pro this year was he was kind of waiting for college to start. Right, so he was already kind of in his mind, like he didn't know where he was going to stand. Right, he had finished with the academy, won Academy Player of the Year, so obviously the academy thought highly of him, right, to give him that award for inaugural academy award. But at the same time, he was also 50-50. When I talked to him, he was like leaning towards going to college, but he's like, you know what, I might as well. I mean, I have to wait until the fall. Might as well play with the Next Pro, see if I get on the team. Then he starts scoring. Then he starts starting. Can't take him off the field, and this is where he's landed with a pro contract, Crown Legacy pro contract, but with a guaranteed first team contract worked in there in the future. The progression he's made in one season is phenomenal. I mean, he's tied for the most assists ever in a single season for an MLS Next Pro. Definitely one of the top prospects coming out of that development league right now.
Nice. And shameless plug. You did an article on Kevin
Sawchuk. Yep.
Say it again.
Sawchuk, I think that's how you say it.
Okay. Yeah. I knew I was gonna butcher that.
Yeah.
But and so he's taking over as interim, and I mean he's already, like, not to put down what Jose did, but he's already further in the playoff than he ever made. So.
He got a playoff win, and honestly, he took the team over at I mean, Jose had him. I mean, they were pretty much out of the playoff picture. He came in as the interim. Definitely elevated their game and their level. I mean, I think he also fits into what kind of Dean Smith's approach is in terms of like setting high standards. He doesn't really care who you are. He told me in my interview with him that he's like, I don't care if it's Nimfosh is getting all this like clout, right, with the U.S. men's national team, the youth levels and stuff like that, playing with the U20s and stuff, scoring bangers in the final. But still, he was like, you have to earn your minutes here. And like there were times when he wouldn't start Nimfosh, right? So situations like that where it doesn't really matter what your clout is, what your contract is, who you are. If you don't show up the way we expect you to throughout the course of the week as a player, you're not going to get the minutes. And I think that also opens up just for that means just any player should also feel that they always have a chance to be a part of this team, whether it's at the Next Pro level, the first team level. I mean, that's what you see Privet. I mean, when you see Tim Ream get signed, you see all these veteran players, Uranen, Tim Ream, how am I going to get back on the field with, my super draft, contract? But he finds a way back on because he, fights for that spot back. Those situations, Burn improving, Urso finding a spot back with the team, there was a time when he barely, made the roster in trial, those kind of situations. Now he's a key piece to what they're doing success-wise. So you're seeing that at all the levels.
Nice. Good. Anything you want to add to that? I mean, you were
No, I mean, I think I love the tweet that you put out today. Is just a variety of young talent on that
Yeah.
legacy side.
Yep.
We have a lot of great. It's one thing to sign all these young players abroad and bring them
Yeah.
to your second team and really sort of, it could either completely stunt the growth of your academy guys because they don't get playing time, or it can enhance the whole level and playing field where those guys were. You're coming in with Portuguese talent, you're coming in with different types of talent, and I think that legacy have benefited from having a good balance of both foreign players, domestic guys, college guys, all kind of blending in, and it's just raised also the floor for everybody. And so, yeah, I mean, things are going really great. Big shout out to Ben Green, the scout for the upcoming talent, Charlotte FC scout, who primarily focuses on upcoming talent, so legacy talent stuff. Really sharp guy. So shout out to what he's doing at next.
100%. He's been an integral part of finding some top talent in that collegiate level. I mean, Andrew Privet, Patrick Agyemang, you know,
Scardina,
Yup.
all these guys. That draft class alone is like pretty special. I mean, those three guys.
I think we'll look back in like 10 years from now and talk about that draft class.
Yeah.
You know? So,
you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll definitely be interesting. One last thing I also wanted to touch on was last week we got a chance, Brian and I, to go to an event hosted by Ally and Charlotte FC for Pitches for Progress. And so they did a collaboration with the Creative Player Foundation, you know, so it's pretty cool, like seeing all these pitches come across the city, right? And the Creative Player Foundation is just a nonprofit that, you know, helps, you know, kids with like, you know, that are in like rough communities, and they help them with like after school programs, and they kind of use soccer as an outlet. And, you know, first of all, growing up in this city, I know exactly what it's like that. Like, you know, I'm not trying to get like too personal in this pod, but like, you know, like I lost my dad when I was young, and it's really cool that like there's a lot of not cool, but it's cool in a sense that there's a lot of stories out there like that, and these guys can go in and help. You know, and just seeing what Ally and Charlotte FC are doing on that side, I thought was pretty cool, you know. And so I know, Brian, you got a chance to be at that event.
Yeah. I mean, I was really impressed by that event. Just the partnership between Charlotte, the partnership between Ally and Creative Player, and Daniel, especially, just the guy who runs Creative Player. He spoke at the event. I got to talk to him a little bit afterwards, and he kind of explained exactly what they do in terms of their partnership with another nonprofit as well, where they really focus on making sure the kids are obviously getting outside and playing soccer in the afternoon from 3 to 6, but also getting fed, reading. So there's just like a whole ingrained process to what happens. They're making sure they're getting an opportunity to study and read and learn, as well as getting an opportunity to just play outside and be outside, which in today's school system is harder and harder to get the necessary outside time. So I feel like there's just so many positives that kind of come out of different organizations like that. It was just really great to see. Another thing that stood out to me was Daniel mentioned this kid Norland, who was a part of their organization when he was 12 or 13. Ended up earning, I think, a college scholarship. I think to I think it was Wake Forest. He said, don't quote me on that, but he got a college scholarship, and then ended up, instead of going on to a career, came back to that organization and asked Daniel how he could help. So seeing that full cycle coming all the way back through,
it speaks volumes to what they're doing, man. It does. And I mean, like, even when we were there, so first, side story, when I got there, I tore my ACL there like 3 years ago, you know, which was insane, right? And so seeing a whole new pitch, like, I'm like, okay, it's kind of like, it's good that happened, right?
I didn't realize that was at that pitch.
Yeah, it was that. Bro, I looked at the spot where I tore my ACL for a whole 30 seconds, and I went back, you know? But I remember this clear as day, because that's when Mexico and Argentina played, and Messi scored, and then they went on the run. So because I gave up my ACL, Messi won the World Cup, and I think that's a fair exchange.
Oh my gosh.
No, but getting back to what Creative Players doing, great stuff. Even though they did a lot of renovations for them as well. You know, Ally, Charlotte FC, this partnership with them, because he mentioned there as well that, you know, the roof would have leaks when it rained, and it's not anymore. Which it's just small things like that. Like we think about the soccer perspective of things, but then there's that second layer of community and being able to help out. And, you know, especially Hispanic kids, they use soccer as an outlet. I know I used it as an outlet. you know, in the past. So
And I mean, it'll keep kids out of trouble, right? If you are able to go somewhere and like that indoor facility is a place you can go to at night, right? During the winter, right? So times when you wouldn't be able to play ball necessarily, you have a place to go and play, right? And honestly, for me, like there's no better way to like keep kids out of trouble unless they're if they're just playing in the community together, and having a place like that to do that is a great way to do that.
nice.
And I'll add real quick. I'm really looking forward to 10 years down the line, seeing what kids were playing on that pitch, where that dream was sparked of, hey, you know what? I got a chance. If I keep working at this field, I got a chance to go play for Charlotte this year, go play for the academy. And I can't wait to see, maybe 10, 15 years down the line, we see a kid, we sign a homegrown kid, and his story started on a pitch just like that.
Well, think about the story with Chris Hagart and Sasha Kleshtan.
Yeah.
Right, that like like stuff like that it's bound to happen.
Yeah.
Right, and I just think you invest good into the community and good things come back out.
Yeah.
So with that said, is there anything else you guys want to add right before we close? Parting thoughts?
Nah, man.
Excitement.
There's a lot of excitement, a lot of great vibes. This is going to be a big challenge. I think this will also be, I don't know, even though last year we made playoffs, it was a different feeling, we talked about this before the show. It's a different feeling because it kind of felt like we kind of scraped in there, a relief. Okay, cool, we checked that box, we're good. This time around, it's like, hold on, we can actually do something in playoffs. Like, this isn't just okay, I'm just happy to be there. I don't think the fandom feels we're just happy to be here. I genuinely think the fans and the community feels that no, we can actually go and do something in this. And so that's super exciting. I haven't felt that as a Charlotte FC fan up to this point. I don't think any of us have.
As a Carolina fan in general,
it's been a long time.
Well, even think about it though. Like, I obviously love, like, we cover soccer in Charlotte, right?
Yeah.
You've got Charlotte FC in playoffs doing well.
Mhm.
You got Independence in playoffs, right? You've got Crown Legacy in playoffs.
Yep.
You have Carolina Ascent as well, who are undefeated in this brand new league.
Yep.
So, I mean, stuff that I never 10 years ago, if you would have told me all of this was going to happen in this city, I would have been like, what? And so
I'm just really excited to see what this home crowd looks like. We talked a little bit about that earlier in the show. If they can get 60K plus in the stadium, if not even more, I mean, just to see that kind of crowd as loud and as lively. I mean, I don't know if anything will have compared since their very first match ever, right, at home. So I mean, just to see that kind of vibe again brought back at a playoff, I mean, it should even break that in terms of just energy. So,
and I'll add to it, I think making a statement in playoffs, I also think every time we do that is just a way to reach out to new fans. Right.
100%.
There's gonna be some people at that game. This is the first time watching the Charlotte FC game. I know that for a fact. People at my new job, I've been spreading the gospel of Charlotte FC everywhere I go because I'm telling
you still got a part-time in sales.
Charlotte FC, give me a little commission, please, for every ticket sale. But I'm spreading that gospel. And I tell people, like, hey, there's a home playoff game here. Here. And Charlotte fans, like, they're tired of losing teams. It's the reality, right? And so this is a great opportunity to have a good time.
It's a great point.
Be a part of history. And so there's gonna be a lot of new people that haven't watched the game, gonna get exposed to the sport and to the team. And so
100%
building the community.
Just speaking to the appetite, we didn't even broadcast that we were doing this. We have over 400 people on this live.
Wow.
So
Holy
people
smokes.
are excited about soccer in the city, right? So
I'm
shout out
glad
to
you told me that at
everybody.
the end of the show.
Nice. And like I said, we're gonna continue our coverage. Obviously in Orlando. As far as we go into the playoffs, we're lining up really cool special guests, so I don't want to say any names because you never know, so, but I'm excited. We're heading into playoffs with momentum, right? And Brian, my man, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at BAM Media. You can find all my written content at Topbin90.com.
Nice. And Caleb?
On Twitter as well. Honestly, I kind of forgot my handle. I think it's
here. Hold on. I think I got
it. It's Caleb Adams.
It's Caleb Adams.
It's Caleb Adams. Yeah, there it is.
Nice. You've been putting out a lot of you've always put out a lot of good content.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
But just stats, like if there's three accounts that you need to follow, right? If it's not Topbin, it's Caleb Adams, Vaughn Pullman. I don't know what his Twitter is right now, and then Bam Mauer Media. These guys live, breathe MLS in Charlotte. Some of the best minds. With that said, I'm Jorge Gonzalez. This is Topbin90. Thank you guys for joining our live.